not only being all, just people need to know there was some roof damage and there is a leak apparently in the Germain Center arena. Anderson, as the wind howls again, I will toss it back to you.
All right, Drew, thanks very much. Uncertainty, that is really, I guess, the buzzword right now. You just heard from Tom Sater. This, in his words, the storm is playing tricks right now, possibly moving more in the area, more northeastern area in direction toward Orlando, less to Tampa. Nobody's out of the woods. Reporters who are on the East Coast, of course. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
One of the shelters at Challenger and Winkler. It's on Challenger in South Fort Myers.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You can see the wind in the open fields blowing. You can see it all right there.
North Fort Myers next, I think. Another look at some very, very strong winds. You know, the palm trees swaying like we have, and it's so dramatic wherever you are, just to have this going on right around you. And the sounds that you hear sometimes that you don't know exactly what they are a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, that really is. Think of all your senses. I mean, what you see on TV, it's not as bad as what you experience when you're really there, because it doesn't involve all your senses. You don't hear it all. You don't smell the weird smells that in the wind. You don't feel it. You know, your senses just kick off as soon as you have all those sounds and from the wind. So it's not the same to see it on TV as to be there.
And we've been telling people at home, we're all in this together, and we truly are. We're starting to really hear things start to somewhat ramp up outside of our studios here. In fact, we can show you the tower cam if we can give you a live look from the tower cam. And this is over the creek. Oh, looks like, yeah, again, the camera is blowing around.
So this is at the Wink TV studios, and even though the camera is blowing around, yeah, this is our sky cam right here at the studios near downtown Fort Myers.
I had it down at the canal briefly, and it was horizontal rain. It was definitely horizontal rain. We're getting pelted here right now. I can't move the camera because the wind is pushing it. It will just burn up the motor that allows it to rotate. Yeah, we're getting significant weather in downtown Fort Myers right now. This is that crescent-shaped part of the eye wall, only over at Fort Myers, but it is the same weather our friend JC in Lehigh Acres describing just minutes ago, snapping a concrete pole. This is extremely rough weather that fortunately a good portion of Southwest Florida will never experience, but this is moving through the most populated area of the region, from Naples to Golden Gate to Marco, through Estero to Bonita Springs, now Lehigh Acres to Fort Myers, North Fort Myers, you're next. So thousands of our residents will be experiencing this very rough weather. Our building is making some groaning sounds at the moment as well. It is reacting to this extreme wind event that is occurring here right now. It's something to behold. One other thing I want to mention here before we get it much farther along here, it's 6:47. It's one thing to have these pictures. And then they're very helpful. I think it gives us all a good perspective of what's happening. But sunset is at 7:37. And in about an hour to an hour and a half, it's going to be dark. And this is still going to be an ongoing event. So we're really not going to have an idea of what's happening until perhaps sunrise. And kind of makes it a little scarier, not being able to know the play-by-play and picture-by-picture. So even though you at home will not be sleeping for a while, nor able to sleep,
just look at those palm trees. Listen to that wind.
And we are just getting whipped right now with it. The other problem, of course, this wind is whipping us.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly right. A curfew here in the city of Miami. That's really to keep people safe. This is what we're seeing on the ground just here in Brickell. This is glass shards everywhere. Some guy that was on a bike told me he popped both of his tires because of glass just outside of this building. That's the Panorama building right there. That's the tallest residential building in Miami, tallest building in Miami, under construction. We showed you earlier 6-foot panels that are continuing to fall off of that building onto the ground. So dangerous situation.
No place though, certainly out of the woods. A storm surge still obviously the big concern here in Tampa, in Clearwater, where Ryan Young has been reporting. But I want to go to Brian Todd, who is in West Palm Beach, where, Brian, I think a lot of people felt like the East Coast, given that this was supposed to be predominantly West Coast storm, would at this point, be seeing a lot reduced winds and rain. But you're still getting hit.
We're getting hit very hard, Anderson. Just moments ago, we saw another transformer blow to my left, to your right, a large kind of blue concussive blast that reflected on the sky. Strange thing to watch. And you hear a little, kind of an explosion. So these are things that we have to keep our eye on, because we're right in the middle of a neighborhood where 3 of these transformers have now blown up. Again, now that the night sky has descended upon us and we're in darkness with the power out, this is our own light that we set up reflecting on me. But the power's out, and it's getting to be pitch black around here with the debris still flying. And I don't know if you saw that, but there was another blue just over my left shoulder. You might have been able to see that briefly. So again, it looks like more transformers are exploding here in Palm Beach. You talked about the strange nature of the storm and not being able to predict where it's going. That's been the case here for now more than 8 hours, because we've been in intense hurricane force winds for 8 hours as we've been in kind of what they call the dirty side of the storm, with the the regrouping of the energy, pushing it in a circular way and pushing it straight into Palm Beach. The actual the wind gusts here have turned circular in recent hours, so that's been another kind of dangerous aspect here, with debris flying, and some of it is not. These are not light objects that are flying around. So, Anderson, they are certainly not out of danger here in Palm Beach. They might have expected to be by now, but they are certainly not. We are told that, again, activity is a threat here. It's been a threat all day, and it's actually been a threat here since last night. We have had water spouts in the intercoastal waterway just feet away from where I'm standing, and tornadoes kind of developing and then fizzling out to the north, to the west, and to the south of us. So this area, I think they're just taking a hit here that they may not have expected. At least they didn't expect it to be sustained for this long, Anderson.
Yeah, we're going to check back. We got a contact with Rosa Flores, who was in downtown Miami, where some of the images from Miami earlier today, just extraordinary, seeing the amount of water on the streets over on Brickell, just amazing. Rosa, what is it like now compared to what obviously you were seeing earlier?
Hey, so Anderson, a few hours ago, we couldn't come and be live at this position because the wind tunnels were so strong. There was so much debris flying in the air that we couldn't be here. We actually had to be live a few blocks down. But take a look. There is still flooding. There is still ponding here. Now, I'm probably about 1 or 2 streets from the ocean. There was a 3.5-foot surge that came in that brushed into Brickell, which is the heart of the financial district. There are more banks and international banks in a few blocks than you can count. And take a look behind me. You can still see that there is still flooding. There's been a few brave souls that have been to get through this water, both walking and in their vehicles, and it is not recommended by first responders and city officials. Now, there is some power. If you take a look around, there is some power in some buildings with power, where we have seen FPNL personnel coming into some of these buildings to try to restore power, because we do know that 100,000 people in Miami-Dade are without power tonight. So Anderson, still, Miami didn't get the brunt of IRMA, but it still created a lot of chaos. We saw wind tunnels here in downtown, a broken crane, flooding, surge, and you can still see some of that flooding now. Anderson?
And just on the streets, how easy or difficult is it for you, for crews, and for most importantly for first responders to get around? Just how much debris is there in the streets?
There's a lot of debris. There are big trees that cross several streets. The one that's actually behind us is completely blocked to my left. There are also drains that are completely clogged because of all of the debris that has been flying around and that these wind tunnels have been creating. And now, as I mentioned before, one of the other big concerns are those cranes. There are more than 20 cranes that dot the skyline of Miami. At least 2 of them have already snapped. We monitored multiple during our coverage today, and you could see them swing, you can see them sway. That's another big concern as first responders start coming out and assessing some of the damage and as they try to get to these streets and to people's homes to try to restore power and also to try to figure out if everyone is safe. We've seen a few crews tonight, Anderson, but we do know that there is a curfew starting at 7 p.m. tonight through 7 a.m. But of course, first responders are waived from that curfew as they try to assess some of the damage.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Rosa. We'll continue checking with you. I want to go to Miguel Marquez, who's in Punta Gorda. Miguel has been showing us that the water is being sucked out, basically, by the counterclockwise movement of the storm. That phenomenon, which is so strange, so extraordinary to see. I know you're in a different location now. Where are you, and what's it like?
Yeah, we're moved to a different location because 1, it was very dark down there, and 2, we weren't sure when the storm surge was going to come in once the eye wall hits. We're in the worst of it right now in Punta Gorda. EOC, the Emergency Operations Center officials, saying that they're expecting about 110-mile-hour winds about this time in Punta Gorda until we get that eye, and then things change course. The lights out, I don't know if you can even see when I walk over this way, it is completely dark here. There's one building down the street that clearly has a generator on. But all the water you see standing in front of us right now is just the rainwater. What we're expecting still is that surge. They're saying 5 to 8 feet. They may have as much as 3 feet of standing water, they're saying, in some parts of town. It is not clear it's going to be that bad. For all of the concern about this storm, and while it is terrible to be in it right now, and people are taking great precaution, it does not appear at this point to be hitting to the degree they thought it might. The winds have pretty much leveled off. They feel maybe 60, 70 miles per hour. It is not clear they're going to get to that 110 mile per hour winds that the emergency operations folks were expecting. Anderson?
Well, which is certainly good news, but still 110 miles, 100 miles an hour winds, 50 mile an hour winds can do a lot of damage. And again, that storm surge, that really seems to be the biggest concern at this point. Just for you to move around, are you seeing, is there debris in the streets, or are things pretty clear?
There is not a lot of debris in the streets. The one thing about being in Punta Gorda is that it was hit so hard during Charlie, and just, of course, as I said, we weren't getting a lot of big wind. We get one of the biggest gusts that we've had in some time. This is probably up there in the 70 mile an hour range. Because Charlie swept through here and nearly wiped this place off the map, there are a lot of sort of empty lots, and you can see where buildings used to stand in town. They have rebuilt quite a bit. They've hardened a lot of buildings. The buildings they had built are in much better shape. So it's sort of a city reborn, but you don't have the large number of trees and other things. We were in a park, and a newish park that's probably been built in the last 10 years or so, and many of those trees had been uprooted and fallen over, but you could see sort of the younger root balls of those trees. They were not fully established, and that seems to be the biggest problem. Anderson?
Miguel Marquez, thanks very much. Be careful. Again, we're going to continue checking with you in the hours ahead. The headline right now is this storm, as Tom Sater said, is playing games. Unclear exactly the status of it, exactly the direction that it is moving. I mean, Tom is saying it is moving northeast in a more easterly direction, which would certainly be some better news for areas like Tampa, which have been expecting to be on the worst side of this storm. Obviously, storm surge, like in Punta Gorda, here in Tampa, that is a big issue. But again, the uncertainty is frankly frightening at this point. We'd obviously like to have a better handle on exactly the formation of this storm and exactly the movement of this storm. And as Tom said, it is moving at a pretty good clip. I think he said it was in the 12 to 14 mile an hour range. Yesterday it was about 8 miles an hour, 6 to 8 miles an hour, very slow moving. The fact that it's moving quicker is also certainly good news. But that uncertainty, that is the headline right now, and the concern. We're going to take another break. More ahead.
This is CNN.
Where a lot of residential condo buildings are and nice restaurants. You can see the storm surge came in all the way here. We don't know how far it goes back. I'd say 7 or 8 blocks at least. It's about 3-4 inches. Luckily, you can tell a lot of these buildings, especially the one we're on, are elevated. So, you know, I don't think. Let's just hope that none of the water really got into the lobbies of these places. It's a good thing that, you know, you can see the elevation on the staircases. It doesn't look like the water, you know, went over and perhaps into those lobbies. So that is some good news. We've got some fire alarms going off to our left over here, and you can take a look at this tree right here. You've got the blue debris. That's straight from that building all the way at the top. So a dangerous situation here. The city of Miami is bringing out 5 crews to assess the damage tomorrow. And, you know, we need to keep people off the streets, which is why the curfew is in place, because it is dangerous. A lot of people get injured mostly after the storm, trying to assess damage, trying to take photos. They need to really stay safe. Stay inside for now, guys.
Brian, look over your right shoulder. I think I see somebody behind you.
Yeah, that's somebody. I think that, I don't know if he's a journalist. Oh, yeah. People are coming in. You see, that's the problem. They're taking photos. They think it's fun and games, but, you know, when you're in there, yeah, you see, that's the tough thing. It's going to get dark here really quickly, and there's things falling off the building. So you gotta just be careful and not come out right now. It's not the situation to do so.
Someone is trying to drive.
You know, people are curious.
Look at that. I mean, they're warning about not driving, and someone's trying to drive through that water. I mean, look, there could be down power lines. You've got shards of glass, other obstacles under that water. Even though folks think it could be fun, that's actually something that's really dangerous, especially if you have any loose other panes of windows, high up, that just shows a city, an American city, paralyzed tonight, despite the best efforts because of what they went through.
And hey, Brian, again, look at that truck. Now he's trying to back out because he realizes that water is deeper than he thought.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's why floodwaters are very difficult. You think you know, but then you get into it and all of a sudden, and we're still getting gusts. We're still getting gusts of wind that's taking down panels off the building. So it's just not a good situation right now. You should not be driving in this. You should not be standing in this. And, you know, this is the type of flooding we're seeing. We're seeing flooding in residential areas. If you keep going down this road, you're going to be seeing houses in Coconut Grove. And, you know, we haven't been able to see firsthand what the flooding is like there because of the storm surge. But one has to presumably think that if it's over here, then over there, you know, further down in some of these homes, they're seeing flooding too. And so this is where it's the most dangerous part in many ways of the storm. It's the after. You got to be very, very careful. These shards of glass, there was a woman that was barefoot trying to come say hi to us. We were like, please don't. You know, you're going to get yourself hurt. So yeah, make sure you stay in. That is why there's a curfew in place, guys.
Indeed, and let's hope. Just look at those palm trees. Listen to that wind.
And we are just getting whipped right now with it. The other problem, of course, this wind that is whipping us is somewhere along the coastline, 3 miles from me, bringing that surge and that water into where we did some of those earlier shots. This beach road, we'll see how far. It won't be 3 miles, but it'll certainly be blocks like it was in Wilma in 2005. When you talk to the locals, the first thing they tell you is, oh, I hope it doesn't flood like it did on Gulf Shore Drive in 2005. Well, my guess is, and I'm not going there anytime soon, my guess is when we take a look, when this blows over, it's going to be equally that bad. And it's also worth pointing out that back literally on this day in 1960, Hurricane Donna whipped this area and devastated, according to the locals here, devastated Naples, and they're taking a beating right now, Chef.
Griff Jenkins in Naples for us. Let's get down to Marco Island.
Around,
the storm's eye
it's just swirling, and I know Ryan Young is standing by just due west of me in Clearwater. Ryan, you've been experiencing the same thing. I think you're over by near the airport, and it seems like you've been getting hit just in all directions.
Yeah, we're just south of the airport. In fact, I can see the end of the runway just over there. I wish I could look back that way. I can't. Honestly, when we were standing here before, it was really just a sideways, east to west. The wind was moving. Now it is swirling all around us, and of course, it is dark in most places. So what you're really seeing here is just the wind whipping us around. My photographer is actually standing next to a concrete post, and that's why he's able to stand straight up to get this shot. But sometimes you stand with a wide base and the wind whips through you, and then the other time it like comes back around and circulates around you. We've been talking to folks who are first responders who are here at the hotel where we're staying, and they talked about the idea that this does not translate very well on television. That when they walk outside and they see the force of the wind, how quickly things are moving, and the debris that's flying by us, they get a different sense of just how powerful things are. So I don't know how that's translating across the television screens, but I can tell you it is hard to turn your body in the direction of the wind at any point. Because not only are you getting hit with the needles of rain, but it's that wind gust that sometimes will lift you off your feet. That's why you got the wide base. The good news here, though, is the power is still on. And we have seen transformers blowing, but the power has not gone out for most of the area. Some street lights dangling. You can hear this wind really giving me a run for my money. But the whole idea, though, is we haven't seen any major damage so far. And making those phone calls around, there have been no reports of major damage. But with this wind consistently blowing like this, roof tiles, furniture that's in people's yards that is loose, those can become projectiles. So you really have to watch out during these hours, especially because you don't know what could be coming at you if it's in the dark, Anderson.
As you said, the fact that you have power, just as in Tampa here, there's still power. That's certainly a blessing for the people here. 3 million people without power right now in Florida, according to officials. And you talk about those transformers. We've just seen the third one here light up as well. That eerie blue light, which is so kind of surreal in the midst of this darkness. As you were going around, are you seeing anybody outside of you? You were talking to somebody a little bit earlier. Most people, obviously, though, are still staying inside, are still hunkered down.
Look, this is the good news here. When it was 20 miles per hour wind gusts, we saw some people who were kind of driving around, looking, trying to see what we were up to. When the wind gusts got around 40, 45 miles per hour, we saw everyone sort of disappear. At this point, if you don't have a reason to be on the road, there's no reason to be out here because, again, you can just see just how strong the wind gusts are in this area. In fact, we've been watching a few signs in the distance over here, whether or not they'll be completely ripped off. And there's a billboard above my head that's been popping. And we've heard that noise of the billboard popping back and forth. So it's got a little give in it, but you just don't know when it's going to give in. As you can see how the wind gusts keep giving enough of a push. It almost feels like you're on a motorcycle, just going as fast as you can with the jacket blowing, but it just doesn't stop it. You have the rain. It's just amazing with the power that it has at this point, Anderson.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how the bands of this storm, it'll kind of push you back for a little bit. And then they'll dissipate, and you kind of feel like, oh, well, it's going to be calm for a while, and then another one just comes along, and the rain just keeps switching the direction that it's coming from, as you say, at times almost horizontal, not as much as certainly as we saw, in Naples, Florida earlier when Chris and Ed Lavandera were on the air, that, just those sheets of water. Bryn Gingras, though, she is in Orlando, and remember now, Tom Sater saying that storm, as confusing as it is, moving a little bit more to the east, perhaps more in the direction of Orlando. Certainly what might be good news for people in Tampa is bad news potentially for people in Orlando. Bryn, I'm wondering, first of all, just what are conditions there like? And obviously, for anybody hearing in Orlando, about the movement of this storm, there's got to be more concern.
I mean, yeah, we're in the middle of the state. We're not by a coast, but that doesn't make us immune. We are getting smacked with wind gusts right now and just tons of rain at this point. Officials here tell me they don't expect the worst of this storm, or at least the worst to begin until midnight. So we're several hours away from that, but we're already seeing a lot happening here in Orlando. We have been hearing, what Ryan was saying as far as the transformers blowing, that blue light lighting up the sky further behind us, and emergency vehicles rushing that direction. And then sometimes we're actually hearing this sound like a car crash, if you can believe it. And these guys are running, which is insane to me. But we hear like the sound of like a car crash. And what that is, if you can see these sort of globes that are the glass globes that are around the street lamps, those are coming crashing down onto the street. So that is just a big globe of glass just crashing. And we've heard it several times tonight, especially left, where it's really wind tunnels through downtown Orlando. Now, I was going to say I haven't seen many people out, but of course I just saw those people running, and it's terrifying because there are moments when we're getting this major wind gusts, and right over here to my right is actually a construction site, and as someone described to me, just one loose nail in a major wind gust, that could be like a bullet. I mean, this is very dangerous to be anywhere near this area at this point. And we're also at this point seeing emergency vehicles actually going toward to that transformer blast that we saw. Power and light. We think that they are still responding to things, but we know when wind gusts are about 65 miles per hour or over, they're going to stop. So Tom would know better than me, but right now it seems like they're pretty up there.
Yeah, Brandon, appreciate that. Be careful. We're going to take a short break. Our coverage continues, not only here from the west, but also from the east. And as this storm seems to be moving somewhat eastward, we'll get more updates from our meteorologist from the Weather Center ahead.
Just a short time ago, Wayne flew off.
And he's here with those. Yeah, that's right, guys. Like you said, I've been scrolling through Twitter, and as Irma moves its way up Florida, some pretty incredible footage is surfacing on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, the like. Starting off with this one that has been popped up earlier today. A meteorologist out chasing storms in Key West gets out of his car to measure wind speeds, and I don't even know if he needs whatever tool he's got with him, because as you can see, the wind is so powerful, it's almost knocking him over. It's almost a leg and a core workout just to stand up. That's how dangerous some of these 100+ mile-an-hour winds are. And then let's go to the next one. More example of how strong these winds are. This one is in Miami. They're experiencing the outer bands of Irma since yesterday. Winds rip off the roof. This is out of West Brickell, a neighborhood there. Rips off the building of a roof. And now this one is in Fort Lauderdale. More example of how powerful these winds are. Check out the root, the base of the tree. You kind of see where this is going. It looks like the ground is almost breathing. And just like that, the tree topples over. You see those the roots look like they're almost 10, 15 feet high. Thankfully, the tree did not land on anything but the fence. And finally, this is footage out of Tampa. This is what has happened here is Irma is so powerful that it has temporarily displaced part of the ocean. It's what's called negative storm surge. Irma has essentially sucked water out of the Tampa Bay into its core, and it looks like compelling footage right now, and it is. But as soon as Irma makes its way back to Tampa, it's going to force that water back into the bay. Guys? Yeah.
Things are changing. You're outside. That's a good sign, we think.
We're outside. Yeah, the winds, right as we started talking, started picking up, but that storm surge is coming. As you can see, my hat just blew off. The winds are picking up. The storm surge is coming. The palm trees, you can feel the sand just hitting your face here. We did step outside because those winds weakened up a little bit, but they do seem like they're picking up now again. But as you can see, palm trees are down. As this water comes up, here we're at the Diamond Head. It's going to look much different in a couple hours here. Again, we're standing outside. The rain is hitting us in the face. As you can see, my photographer Adam here is panning out to the Gulf. That water is really coming up high. Those tides are coming up high, and we're expecting those storm surges. We just wanted to give you guys a live look outside to show how, it's ominously kind of peaceful out on the horizon, but you can see the water coming quickly towards us. We're going to head back inside, though, soon to make sure that we stay safe, but we did feel comfortable coming back out here. As you can see, the winds are still strong, but I want to tell you about the feel inside the hotel here at the Diamond Head. Most people that we're talking to, we all feel safe. Everybody's feeling pretty calm and collected. We're inside a sturdy building, so we're just waiting for the storm to pass, and we're riding it out here.
Yeah, get to higher ground, Taylor. We appreciate you showing us that, because that's very important for everybody else on Fort Myers Beach to see, or people who have evacuated to see, to know that the surge is coming up. So thank you very much for that.
Just look at those palm trees. Listen to that wind.
At about 4:45 this afternoon, I made a decision. I was out on the streets with my people, and I made the decision to call them off the street. And I can tell you, that's probably the hardest decision I made in 28 years of law enforcement. It's against the grain of the cops to cut and run. And we're staging now, and we're going to hope that the storm passes, and we're going to be ready to protect people and serve like we always do. We have some contingency plans in place if needed, but right now we pulled everybody off the street.
In terms of power, obviously there's lights along this Riverwalk and stuff, but there are power outages here.
Yes, I've seen firsthand out in our neighborhoods that we're having some power outages. And you know, it's sporadic. Occasionally, you may see a transformer blow. It appears.
Yeah, we've seen about 3. It looks like so far.
Yeah, I saw 1. You know, so there's definitely some issues out here, and you know, we're ready to go, and we'll just see how long this goes for.
Are you concerned most about storm surge?
I'm worried about the storm surge with the wind, some structural damage. I'm also extremely worried about the stupidity of people and what they're going to do out there.
You mean criminality, or just kind of people going out to check out the storm?
Both. You know, that we have people that want to go out there and see it, which is stupid, because now you're putting yourselves in danger and the first responders' lives in danger. And then any criminal element that may be out there. And I can tell you, we're ready to respond to anybody who thinks they're going to take advantage of another person.
Your message right now to people in Tampa who are listening is what?
Well, stay inside, stay safe, be compassionate, look out for each other. And if you need us when the storm passes, we're going to be there for you.
Well, Chief, I wish you the best, and you and all your officers. Thank you very much. I want to go to Sarah Seidner, who is on the east in Daytona Beach. Again, the latest from Tom Sater, the storm moving a little bit to the east, but again, kind of a confusing situation. Sarah, how is it where you are?
Look, we're getting another band, and there is sustained winds now that are a heck of a lot stronger. Anderson, are you okay? I can't see you. It sounds like something happened there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Here we
sorry, it was just one of those, again, probably the 4th transformer. This one was clearly closer because it really, I don't know if we caught it on camera at all, but it really just lit up the sky and that kind of that eerie white-blue light, which is so distinctive, which anybody who's covered hurricanes has seen repeatedly. You don't really hear a sound of an explosion, but it's just that light. So I'm sorry to interrupt, Sarah. Go ahead.
No, you had me worried there for a minute, Anderson. I'm glad you're okay. And that's going to keep happening because these winds are no joke. When it comes to power lines, trees fall into them, transformers blow. What is important to tell you, though, is that there are 16,000, and that's from one company alone, the most workmen they have ever sent out to do the work after the hurricane hits, after these winds die down. 16,000 people from Florida Power and Light alone, many of them staying in this hotel, including those who trim those trees and get to these power lines, which is extremely dangerous for the population. I'm going to move out of the way, and you can see down A1A here in Daytona Beach. That is the main drag through Daytona Beach. To your right is the beach. You cannot see it now. It has gotten quite dark, but the surf is ferocious. There is a ton of wind, and these aren't just gusts. It is sustained at this point that we're seeing. And, you know, it hasn't been this bad for much of the time. Everyone else was getting hit. Now Daytona Beach is definitely feeling it. But I do want to mention to you how far away we are and have been from the eye. We're about 225 miles from any semblance of an eye that is left for this hurricane that is now at a Category 2. And yet it is so powerful and so big that all the way on the other coast here on the East Coast, way up on the coast, we are still feeling these intense winds. I also want to mention to you that there are about 500 or so people in Daytona Beach that have been in shelters, and they are safe right now in shelters. We have heard of no injuries and no deaths here in this county so far. This is a county that a lot of people have moved into. It has become very popular here to move to this area. It is inexpensive when it comes to living, and a lot of folks just like to hang out on the beach. We do know of people who said they are staying put. The same gentleman we talked to back during Hurricane Matthew when I talked to you, Anderson, he said he is staying put. He has boarded up. So has everyone up and down the beach. But a lot of people did stay here. But there were quite a few that left because it was very, very, very quiet until all of these folks, these contractors came in to work for Florida Power and Light. There is a sea of trucks, and we're talking all different kinds of trucks to fix those power lines that are sitting right outside the Daytona Speedway where the Daytona 500 is held. And I'm talking a ton of trucks. We're talking about what could be, though, weeks until some people get power if this storm hits, especially Tampa Bay, hard. And so they said, look, sometimes it will be days, but it could be weeks. Anderson?
Sarah, I appreciate that. Sarah was saying no reports of fatalities in that area. That is certainly great news. We do have information now that the official death toll so far from the entirety of this storm, not just here in Florida, but in the Caribbean, obviously, and all the points that it has hit, all those islands, Barbuda, the other places that we have seen, St. Martin, St. Bart's, 26 now is the official death toll. There was reporting earlier 2 officers lost their lives in some sort of traffic accident or collision earlier here in Florida. Trying to get obviously more information about that. We're going to take a short break and our coverage continues here as another kind of gust of wind, band of the storm is hitting in the Tampa area and hitting in the Clearwater area. We'll be right back.
10 seasons on CNN. How the did that happen?
Facebook, Snapchat, the like. Starting off with this one that has been popped up earlier today. A meteorologist out chasing storms in Key West gets out of his car to measure wind speeds, and I don't even know if he needs whatever tool he's got with him, because as you can see, the wind is so powerful, it's almost knocking him over. It's almost a leg and a core workout just to stand up. That's how dangerous some of these 100+ mile-an-hour winds are. And then let's go to the next one. More example of how strong these winds are. This one is in Miami. They're experiencing the outer bands of Irma since yesterday. Winds rip off the roof. This is out of West Brickell, a neighborhood there. Rips off the building of a roof. And now this one is in Fort Lauderdale. More example of how powerful these winds are. Check out the root, the base of the tree. You kind of see where this is going. It looks like the ground is almost breathing. And just like that, the tree topples over. You see those the roots look like they're almost 10, 15 feet high. Thankfully, the tree did not land on anything but the fence. And finally, this is footage out of Tampa. This is what has happened here is Irma is so powerful that it has temporarily displaced part of the ocean. It's what's called negative storm surge. Irma has essentially sucked water out of the Tampa Bay into its core, and it looks like compelling footage right now, and it is. But as soon as Irma makes its way back to Tampa, it's going to force that water back into the bay. Guys? Yeah.
She was at Health Park, and this is video from Lee Memorial in Fort Myers. Oh, and that looks to be a portion of the roof flying off, almost hitting a car in the parking lot. But this is just another reminder of why you don't want to be out and about, because if you were, that can happen.
That's exactly right. And, you know, we saw that earlier today when one of our crews were hit by a tree limb. So, so, you know, you got to be very careful. Let's go to the Sundance Apartments in Fort Myers. That's on East Mall Drive between Fowler and Solomon. Watch. Do you see that blue light?
Oh, is that a transformer?
That's a transformer blowing. And they just happened to be rolling at the time that happened. That, you know, that's something that happens in these kinds of winds, and they just happen to capture it on video.
Feet lower than it was this morning when we started broadcasting. I think it was around 10 a.m. that we started. The water has gone down a lot. But again, Jay, if you're just pushing that water over there, you really just see these sheets of rain skimming across the top of the water. It's kind of a surreal image in the midst of the darkness to be able to see that, because in the dark it can be so deceptive. You don't really get a sense of, you know, unless you're in an area where you're just getting knocked over by wind. In an area like this, some of the buildings are blocking some of the wind, but that rain is just coming in sheets. Coming and swirling around in all directions. But again, that image on the water is one, and you probably can't see it on the camera, but you really see it all throughout the air. I mean, just swirling around, all around you in the air, almost like a vortex in the wind and made out of rain. It's kind of a stunning sight. There's obviously a beauty to it if you didn't know how potentially dangerous and deadly it is. And this is obviously already a deadly storm. As we said, the death toll now has raised to 26. For the islands, for St. Martin, where lives were lost, Barbuda as well. So many of those islands have just been decimated. We're getting reports out of St. John, also St. Martin, St. Bart's, as I said. I want to go to Ryan Young, who is in Clearwater, nearby here, just west of here, part of the Bay Area, Clearwater, St. Petersburg, Tampa. Ryan, I know you've been getting a lot of wind, you've been getting a lot of rain, and again, in this darkness, it is so dangerous out there for people. It is just such a surreal feeling to be in the dark and not know kind of what is coming at you.
That is an excellent point. You talked about the idea of being in a vortex. And to give you an idea, this Anderson, we're under a large concrete overhang, and I step out. The cameraman stays behind that vortex to make sure that the camera's protected and safe, because sometimes it acts like a sail and picks him up off his feet. There's actually a tie down that I can see just in case the gusts get too big where I can actually reach out and try to grab it if we get pushed over too far. But just to show you how this has been changing, the wind is now pushing almost in a different direction than the last time we've seen you. The wind gusts here have been steady. They've been without mercy to us as we've been standing here. And you think about the critical structures in terms of buildings and roofs, because that's what happens when you think about the shingles and you think about projectiles that are flying through the air. That's what makes something like this very dangerous. I could argue that I should probably have goggles on at this point with how fast the rain is coming in toward our face. We started out at your location this morning, and we didn't experience any of this kind of rain as we moved through the area. We went to St. Pete and stood in some watery areas as the water was drawn out by the hurricane. And now we're seeing this big push of water coming back our direction. The streets that we're near, they haven't flooded, but the ponding is something serious. So you can understand that if someone was driving pretty quickly through it, that could be a big issue. The good news here, we haven't seen the last car that we saw on the road with a Florida Highway Patrol officer, and that was more than an hour ago. You know, those guys do such a great job out there on the roads. But at this point, the roads have been clear. It has just been steady, pounding of rain and water. And here we go again with Anderson. It just picks up like this and pushes. The good news, though, is we looked at the rooftop where we are. We haven't seen anything blow off the roof here. Across the street, we have seen some roof tiles kind of rip off and shear. Some people have gone and put tape up against the windows. That's probably not going to do much if something comes toward that window. Other folks have used boards and plywood to protect their windows or shutters, which obviously is the best thing to do. But right now, it's just a straight pounding of wind, water, and rain. And it's, like you said before, pretty amazing to stand in.
Yeah, and as it gets later and later, and the worst of the storm to come, just the continuation, the sustained winds, and just the continuation, the constant rain, all throughout the day, we've been getting bands of the storm. Will there be a light rain or an intense rain, some winds, and then it would die down. People would come out, walk around, take their dogs out for a walk. They would want to get a look at what was happening with the Hillsborough River, at that phenomenon of the water going down. But now it is just, it is relentless. It is sustained minute after minute. It seems to be getting worse. Obviously, we're going to check in with Tom Sater a little bit coming up for the latest on the storm as we await that 11 o'clock update, because we're really trying to get a sense. I mean, there's so much uncertainty right now about the overall direction of the storm, the overall strength of this storm, as that eye has been dissipating. A lot to learn in the hours ahead. Let's take another short break. And
see those blasts of light and you see sparks like that.
I'm guessing there's probably power issues in that neighborhood tonight.
We have some more new videos showing some kind of a small explosion in downtown Fort Myers. Let's check it out.
Whoa! Oh, I got that one.
That might be a transformer as well.
Or some other type of electrical box or utility station.
Yeah, good thing those people were safe distance.
Yeah.
We have some catfish out for a swim in places they haven't explored before. This is on Marco Island. It is catfish swimming down the street because when the water started coming back up, they had plenty of water to enjoy. And so this may have been from the freshwater flooding rather than the saltwater intrusion, but there you go, catfish enjoying it. This is a good day for a catfish, I guess.
I guess so. Calusa Trace Circle, San Carlos Park. This video is from Madeline Suma. Hard to tell exactly what's going on there. Okay, yeah, someone in a car, they're driving and taking us through, giving us a tour. You can see a lot of water on the road there. I was watching that water move and I thought, what is that current from? Until we realized it was someone driving, assessing the damage. So
we don't recommend this.
No.
In fact, already in Lee County, we're under a curfew and the other curfews begin at 9. So you shouldn't be on the street. You shouldn't be in an area where there could be something unknown underneath or water deeper than you expect. Let's go now to Gateway because there's some damage at Gateway. Oh, look at this pool cage that has completely been destroyed at a Gateway home in Lee County. And you can see, that's one of the things that they just don't handle themselves very well in high winds. And Gateway went through some really, really high winds this evening.
And unfortunately, we have so many people who have pool cages, so many beautiful swimming pools, and they are not a cheap fix either. So more video from Emerald Cove in Cape Coral. This is from Jeff here, and you can see the water moving pretty well. I mean, that's a road there, but it looks more like a river moving along.
Let's go to LaBelle right now. Jessica Perry sent this. This was shot about 7:24. So this was at the time they were seeing some pretty nasty weather. And you can see that tree snapped off right near the trunk of the tree. So they had some pretty strong winds, clearly, and that's evidence of the damage.
Yeah, it's hard to tell
Alex, how are things down in Sarasota?
Yeah, we're entering the most dangerous period for Sarasota right now, Anderson. In the next hour, we're expecting the winds to start peaking. Those winds are going to peak for around 4 hours from 10 p.m. Eastern time to 2 a.m. Eastern time. We have seen a steady deterioration of the conditions out here. This street being used as a wind tunnel. I mean, the wind constantly going in this direction. Wave after wave of wind and rain, the rain pelting your face. It feels like bees stinging your face. Just getting absolutely worse by the minute. It's strange to think that this is absolutely the best conditions that we are going to feel until around 2 a.m. in the morning. But let me just give you a sense of what we're seeing here. It's a very eerie scene. There's no one out here, thankfully. Everyone is taking shelter. But we have lost power a number of times over the course of the past hour. We've lost power 3 times. The street lights have gone out. The lights in front of the storefronts have gone out. And everything has been complete blackness. And as you were saying, that's when you feel most vulnerable. That's when you feel like something could come barreling out of the darkness and hit you or hit anybody else who might be out here. Now, we are starting to see some of that debris, with palm fronds, branches, other things that can be picked up and used as projectiles in these winds. We're told by our own weather center that those winds are expected to peak around 80 miles an hour. There's going to maintain an average around 80 miles an hour, perhaps gusting up to 100 miles an hour. That's down a little bit from the highest expectations, the highest forecast, because the eye of Irma is not expected now to pass over Sarasota. It's instead expected to pass 20 or 30 miles to the east. And with that is more good news for Sarasota. The storm surge now expected to be around 1 to 3 feet, so not as severe as possible. We're told by this, as expected, we're told by the city manager's office, that means they're hoping to get out before the dawn hours around 2 a.m., but there's a lot left in store for Sarasota, Anderson. The worst is still very much yet to come.
Yeah, well, that's certainly good news on that storm surge. If it is just 1 to 3 feet, that would obviously be that would be very, very good news for Sarasota. But Alex, just in terms of I mean, you've been covering this now for several hours. It's worse obviously now than it was before. What if you could just reiterate what time you expect kind of the worst of it to be? We had been told here in Tampa, for us, it would really be starting around 11 o'clock or so, obviously several hours from now. But Sarasota, obviously being 50 miles down south, I think you said it's going to be I think you said around 10 o'clock. Is that right?
Yeah, Anderson, I'm having a hard time hearing you and even a hard time looking at you through this camera. But essentially what we're expecting is the peak to get reached in the next hour. So from 9 to 10 Eastern time, we're expecting to get up to around Category 1 wind speeds. From around 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., the speeds are expected to average around 80 miles an hour. That's down from around 90, 95 miles an hour, but they are expected to gust as high as possibly 100. Down slightly because, as I was mentioning, the eye of Irma was expected earlier in the day to pass straight over us, giving us that brief moment of calm that we saw Chris Cuomo experience down in Naples earlier. We are not expected to see that now. The eye of Irma expected to pass around 20 or 30 miles to the east. So our strong winds, our peak winds, will last from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. and then taper off after that. Anderson?
Yeah, the amount of rain is just, I mean, you were seeing it with Alex, just the amount of rain coming down right now here in Tampa, it's ridiculous. I mean, it is just sheets of water. It's like people pouring buckets of water on you from various directions. It would be funny if it wasn't so potentially dangerous for anybody who was out, and certainly for the first responders. And he's just heard from the chief of police that he has now made the difficult decision. He said of his career to pull his officers off the streets. They are marshaling, they are in staging areas, and they are going to go out as soon as this thing dies down, probably in the early morning hours tomorrow.
dawn tomorrow or whenever, in order to respond to whatever the most important 911 calls and emergency calls that they have received. Also to try to clear whatever roads need to be cleared. But again, the worst is yet to come, certainly for Tampa in the hours ahead. We're talking 2-3 hours from now. Alex, if you could just stay there. I want to bring in Tom Sater just to get a sense. Tom, if you can, for Alex, for everybody in the Sarasota area, if you can just get a sense of, or give us a sense of what is happening in Sarasota, what's happening here along the west right now.
Sure, absolutely. Get ready for more rainfall, Anderson. In fact, we've got a pretty good band that is going to be making its way into your area of Tampa. You can see where Sarasota is, of course, with Alexander. Look at the colors of not just yellow, but look at the orange on this close-up radar. We continue to talk about the center, which really right now is about 23 miles to the east-northeast of Punta Gorda. That we still continue to see tremendous activity and downpours in that front right quadrant. You can see it right here. It just pretty much shines in the bright orange and into the red. But it's fanning out to the north and off to the northwest and then west. And so these bands, as the system continues to move north, will continue to slide in your direction. So definitely flash flooding. Now, with this, I can also write off, I did write down a few notes on some gusts. Fort Myers, 84 miles per hour. Port Charlotte, 79, which is right here. The Charlotte County Airport, 76 miles per hour. Tampa, 60. But also Moorhaven. On the edge of your screen here is Okeechobee. They're in a pretty good rain pattern as well. They've already picked up 10 inches, and they're going to add to that. They've had a wind gust now in those storms of 89 miles per hour. And if you're curious about Lake Okeechobee, yes, with the 10 inches plus they've received, the Army Corps of Engineers says the levee should hold, but we're going to continue to watch this. Let's move on to the next radar because it is quite interesting what we're trying to see here. First, the severe weather. Up south of Cocoa Beach, they picked up 14.5 inches, and they are in a serious flood situation right now as a heavy band of thunderstorms and what we call training. That's one thunderstorm after another, like the boxcar of a train. It's not just producing more on south of our eye and up to the north. I'm going to let this radar play in a little bit more. We've got a giant dry slot that is starting to infiltrate dry air. That'll help break the system down, but it's going to take a while. Again, remember, this made landfall not just as a 4 in the Keys, but a 3 in Marco Island. So we'd like to see dry air get in, but again, all the activity from the eye is now northward, which, by the way, it continues to move north. Now, as we move along, and we're going to get a new track in a little while, look at the amount of color of red on this infrared satellite imagery. We like to see that colors shrink because that means you're losing the colder and higher cloud tops, and they're more concentrated around that center of the storm. The eye has closed up. We knew this. We saw this the last few hours, more of a rain shaft, but it still has a little bit of a core. It's just the engine's fuel line has been cut off, and it's sputtering a little bit, but it's still trying to breathe. So as it takes a deep breath and is trying to find some moisture, out extend those strong tropical storm force winds and those hurricane force winds, and it's still kicking out these bands of rain. Notice the bright colors off in the northwestern flank, making its way now offshore. Our winds coming up into the Tampa area are going to start becoming due west, and that's going to carry that water outward. Let's move along and take a look at a few more things. From the National Hurricane Center, what they have mentioned, and Anderson, we talked about a slight deviation to the east, maybe away from Tampa for the time being, toward maybe Lake County and Orlando. They have made a statement saying they still believe that after the midnight hour, we're looking at more of a north-northwesterly track. This track seems unusually far to the west, given that we had a little deviation, but I'm going with the National Hurricane Center until we get some more information because they're the best in the world. This continues to have that cone directly half off the coastline and half on, but our center point has changed somewhat. So that's why it's going to be critical to watch and see what happens when the new track comes out in a little while. We still have, of course, about 159 counties up in Georgia that are under a state of emergency. Schools are closed there as well. Significant rain bands will continue to feed in. That means a storm surge on the East Coast will still be significant. Concerned a little bit about St. John's River up in the Jacksonville area and continue to have that wraparound surge below the storm. So again, the system, Anderson, trying to breathe, puttering, but it's been such a massive hurricane, it's going to take some time. The winds obviously are strong enough to do major damage, roof damage, and down power lines, spawn up tornadoes. So we're not out of this yet, even though we've lost significant strength since landfall.
So, Tom, because I can't see the radar tracking, I can't see what you're showing our viewers, unfortunately. I may be asking a dumb question here, but you talked about, you know, kind of an easterly move of this storm the last time we spoke. I'm not clear. Is that still happening? Because I heard you also talk about a northwesterly track.
Well, anytime these systems kind of make landfall, you never know where that center is going to approach. It does some wobbling, it ebbs and flows somewhat, and we saw that right off our landfall. We're looking at that storm system that was almost moving a little bit to the north and then to the east. But again, this system is still trying to get its act together. And as it makes its way a little bit of a component east, it is supposed to make its way back, according to the National Hurricane Center, toward you around 1 in the morning. But I think it's still going to be off to your east. It doesn't mean you're not going to see significant gusts, but we're not taking the center of that storm right over you right now at 1 or 2 in the morning. So they're just saying overnight, expect it to move more northwesterly. Currently, Anderson, it's moving due north, but that little jog we had in the last couple hours to the east was a bit concerning. You know, sometimes we feel like we're better forecasters ahead of the event, and when it's occurring, we're better observers. But we're still trying to catch up with this system and get 1 or 2 steps in front of it. Anderson?
Yeah. Well, Tom, I appreciate that. The bottom line that I take away from that, I mean, if it's still moving northwest, even if this storm is to the east of Tampa, it's bringing misery with it, and that is only going to increase in the hours ahead. And again, when you get into 11, 12, 1 a.m., Alex Marquardt in Sarasota, for people to be worrying at 2 a.m., at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. about potential storm surge, I mean, that just adds insult to injury on top of all the things, the loss of power, to have that worry about storm surge, even if it is in the Sarasota area, 1 to 3 feet, and who knows what it may be in the Tampa area. Yesterday, they were talking 5 to 8. Sounds like it's going to potentially be lower than that here now. But again, at this point, there's still a lot of unknowns, a lot of variables, Alex.
Yeah, 1 to 3 feet, make no mistake, that can still do some damage. Now, they were saying that if it was more than 6 feet, that they were going to expect significant flooding. This is going to be a welcome bit of news, but at the same time, this could do some damage. Now, at the same time, and there goes somebody who really shouldn't be out here tonight. But what we're being told by the managers out here is that they are still the city managers, I should say, they are still expecting significant damage in the wake of this storm. They felt quite comfortable with their preparations for this storm. And we have seen people getting out of town. We have seen people going to shelters. We've seen people hunkering down. So they're not necessarily worried about people out here getting hurt tonight. And except for that one guy who just drove past, we've seen very few people out here tonight. What they're worried about is what is going to follow in the wake of the storm. Now, with that 1 to 3 foot surge, that means in all likelihood, there's going to be less damage, but we could expect to see down power lines. We could expect to see power out for days or weeks. The problem is, they don't really know they can't monitor what's happening right now because this storm is happening in the middle of the night. They had been hoping the way the storm was going, that it would actually happen during the day. It would pass. They would get to go out and start assessing. Now it's happening in the middle of the night. As we were talking about before, we're expecting the winds to start subsiding around 2 a.m. Around that time, just before dawn, we are told they hope to start sending those emergency teams out there to start doing the post-storm assessment. Anderson?
Alex, appreciate that. Be careful. We'll check in back with you shortly. Let's go to Miguel Marquez, who is in Punta Gorda South, where Alex is. Still bad conditions. I know there, Miguel.
Yeah, it may not look like it, Anderson, but we have dodged a bullet here in Punta Gorda, at least for now. The wind has really picked up. We're getting some gusts as high as 80 miles per hour here. It's probably a steady wind of about 50, maybe 60, but the fact that that storm took that jog over to the west, over to the east, means that we're probably not going to see the storm surge that emergency officials were expecting. We have had a fairly large power outage here. Emergency operations folks say that about a third of the area, a third of the town is out of power. We did see a transformer. I saw a transformer, the telltale sign of the transformer blowing a short time ago. So that also happened. It looks like for the moment, this town has dodged a bullet. Back to you.
That would certainly be good news. But again, obviously with that potential storm surge, because you've been seeing that water go out, it's always, you always don't want to predict what may happen with that. I think back 2005, folks in New Orleans thought, they had dodged a bullet, and then woke up, obviously, with surges of water coming. Not to say that this storm for the area around Punta Gorda is going to be anything like that. But again, that phenomenon we see, Miguel, is just so surreal, that you've been showing us all throughout the evening of that water receding, the same kind of thing we've been seeing here on the river. But to see it in the marina, that you were in earlier was so strange. Again, I just want to show the water here, the rain on the water here, just sweeping across. And we've seen about 3 or 4. I think we've now seen 4 transformers light up the night sky over the last several hours. Miguel, just in terms of debris, in terms of moving around in Punta Gorda, obviously streets are deserted. I certainly hope, and I assume first responders aren't able. But is it possible to move around? Is there debris on the ground?
There is some debris. It is fairly minimal. The newer trees, a lot of them have been uprooted in town. The storm surge that they were expecting here, because the eye has moved so far to the east of Punta Gorda, the wind is not going to come around and push a lot of that water back up. So it looks like the bay, the river, the marina where we were earlier will probably fill in more slowly, and we won't have that rush of water, that wave of water coming back into Punta Gorda. So that will help keep things clear and make it passable here. It will be another hour or so before we know just how big that surge is, so we'll be waiting for that. Certainly we move to higher ground just in the event that it does come in higher. But the city itself truly seems to have be dealing with this storm quite well. The fact that Charlie came through here 13 years ago and destroyed much of the city, all those buildings that weren't in great shape, they were gone after Charlie, and everything they've built since is up to a better standard, better materials, and certainly a better construction. Anderson?
That's good news about that storm surge, just that water filling in much more slowly. Miguel, thank you for that. I want to go to Britton Gingras in Orlando. Britton, I understand the conditions there are worse today.
Oh yeah, they're getting a lot worse, Anderson. We're definitely getting high winds, not so much to blow me over, but definitely high wind gusts. So much so that we know that the Orange County emergency services have suspended their services for the night into tomorrow. You can hear in my microphone those heavy wind gusts, and I actually keep peeking over to my right because when I talked to you last, if you remember, I was talking about these globes that are around the lampposts littering all of downtown Orlando, and one literally to my right is hanging by a thread. So I'm just keeping an eye on it so it doesn't fall and actually come tumbling down the street. I do want to mention to you, Anderson, though, as you were talking to Tom, he mentioned the East Coast being, having tornadic activity. And I did confirm with the Brevard County Sheriff's Department, they did have 2 tornadoes touched down. That's according to them. They had a lot of damage with mobile homes there. So far, no injuries reported, so that's good news. But they said they did have 2 tornadoes, and it just kind of gives you the idea of how big this storm is, because remember, I was there earlier this week, everyone there was preparing for the storm, and then they said, oh, it's not coming here, it's going to hit the West Coast. And we talked to a lot of people who were in Orlando who then, said, hey, guess what? I'm going to go home because we're not going to get hit. And now they're getting hit with different activity caused by this storm. It may not be these rains, but certainly they're getting hit. All right, something just hit me in the head. I'm not sure what that was. But anyway, Anders, let me go back to you because I'm a little nervous about this light.
Yeah, we'll get out of that area. Be careful, get some shelter. We'll check in with you a little bit later on. We're going to take a short break. We'll have more from Tampa, from Clearwater, from Sarasota, from Orlando, and all around southern Florida. We'll be right back.
Now for several hours, it just hasn't stopped, Trevor. It continues to batter this area, and until it clears, we just don't know how much damage is out there. We're in a safe spot, but we can't really leave this spot to go out and check anything out. Of course, we wouldn't do that. Never want to put ourselves in harm's way and become the story, because we know the sheriff's not going
blowing out here at 45 mile an hour sustained winds, and that was some 12 hours ago, Shepard.
Adam, eventually this storm's going to head to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay itself is largely dry. Lillian with some video from Tampa Bay now.
Yes, this was taken earlier today, and you can see this Bay area has been cleared out. Very, very eerie.
Boy, you don't want to be out anywhere in a storm. And all the hurricanes I've been in, I still haven't seen anybody walking around. Thank God they're not trying to walk in this stuff. Out there right now, a big tree has come down, another tree over there. Again, and this is the area that's the newer part of Key Largo, so the building codes obviously were all followed. We just don't know what we're going to find when we get to some of the older areas, some of the mobile home areas. You hope people didn't try to ride this thing out, Shepard, because as you can tell from the video, it just continues to batter us here.
It has. A quick update for our viewers. This from the Jacksonville area from the National Weather Service. There is a tornado now. It's a water spout at the moment. The National Weather Service says it's expected to move ashore as a tornado in Crescent Beach, Summerhaven, Marineland. That's in the Jacksonville area between now and 1 o'clock Eastern time. So over the next 30 minutes, a severe storm and tornado warning now. Crescent Beach, Summerhaven, Marineland. If you are in those areas, get to a safe space. The National Weather Service believes a tornado is headed your way. Adam, lots of violent tornadoes out of this thing.
Yeah, Shepard, and it makes sense why. I mean, you see the winds, while it's still coming from my right, you're starting to see them to swirl, so I got to believe that means it's starting to switch out. As you were talking about the other areas, I'm looking at over here, you're talking big pieces of metal now, Shepard. 6 feet by 4 feet, that one looks like just twisted. It blew into a tree down here to my left. As I look back out behind me, you see parts of the roofs torn off. And again, these are the newer parts of the area of Key Largo where we're located. And we're not near the eye as much as Key West was. And some of the video we've seen out of there is just brutal. As you go south Isla Mirada and other places, we've been told they're getting hammered as well. No way that anybody can go out and help anybody in this. And we know that the emergency services here said they would stop at 45-mile-an-hour sustained winds. And again, that was a long time ago. But Shepard, I know you see the video. We can't see the actual. We can't see the actual. Holy smoke! We can't see the radar. And you're saying it's passing us. We still haven't had that switch yet. You can tell it's still coming from my right to my left, which is basically east to west, Shepard.
Sounds like it won't be long now. Adam, your pictures are amazing. We've been watching in downtown Miami, and just moments ago while you were speaking, we were also watching in northeast Miami-Dade County, where the waters have just been kicking up very high. This is dangerous. This is in Miami itself. Turn around, don't drown is what the National Weather Service is asking us to remind our viewers. If you're out and about in this, they say you shouldn't be. And if so, waters are rising across South Florida now, just as predicted. Storm surge is coming in, and as a result,
not going to be getting those winds coming back in, sweeping the water in. It's going to come back, fill in more naturally and more slowly. So that's certainly good news there. Alex Marquardt saying in Sarasota, they're expecting 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, which still could do some damage, but it's less than anticipated. Again, the big question is for Tampa, what kind of storm surge? This is a city which even on a day of heavy rain has problems with flooding and getting that water off the street. So that's something to watch in the hours ahead, and we'll know more of that in the late hours this morning. Let's go to Ryan Young, who's over in Clearwater, just west of here. Ryan, last time we checked in with you, I mean, conditions were really bad. I think you're in a particularly windy area. I think we have some of our wind, thankfully, is blocked by some of these big hotels at Sheridan and others that were around, but it's still pretty bad where you are.
Well, absolutely. The wind is what really takes you literally almost off your feet. And just to kind of show you this, if you have anything sort of blocking you, it changes the whole conversation. I'm going to walk over here. I know my photographer wasn't ready for this. But look, you don't hear as much as the wind if we're standing over here. We have concrete kind of surrounding us. But as soon as you step outside and as soon as you get in the direction of the wind, it is brutal on you. And the wind keeps shifting. So the last time we were talking, you were kind of moving in a circular direction. Now, it is sort of blowing that direction there. And we've actually seen some of these cars kind of almost like they're inching closer and closer together, depending on the gusts. Now, the real conversation here is when you have as much saturation as we're getting, and then you have trees, because that's the whole idea here. Sometimes it's the days afterwards when trees will fall. Of course, palm trees can deal with the wind, but there'll be other trees that will certainly fall, especially when people come out to survey the damage. Now, as we talked about before, the lights are still on in this area. But what's dangerous about this is people decide to come outside and kind of survey the damage, what could happen then? So it's best, obviously, to wait till light. That was the benefit about what happened in Miami because of the fact that it was some sunshine outside. Right now, with this darkness, you really have no idea sort of what's coming in your direction or what's going on around you. So maybe the surge is getting worse in some places. But I can tell you, this wind tunnel that we've been dealing with for quite some time, it has been not only powerful, but it's been unrelenting in terms of the power that we've been feeling with the forces right on cue in terms of this wind, Anderson.
The other thing, you don't think about, Ryan, in a storm like this is just the cold. I mean, for anybody, and that's one of the another one of those reasons that first responders are thankfully off the streets. If you're out in this rain, if anybody's out, if there's homeless people who are out in this rain, just over the hours, the accumulation of the rain hitting you, it's impossible not to just start shivering, not to kind of feel it seep into your bones. It gets just very, very cold out here.
That is the one thing that we felt the temperature drop at least 10 degrees. And you talk about homeless people. We saw a few people trying to walk and beat the storm a little earlier, not sure the direction. This conversation, some people don't want to go to shelters. They rather try to brave this themselves. And some people understand it, but at the same time, people are making some life or death decisions here. And sometimes the least of these people who don't have anything are just hoping to pray on God and quite honestly to avoid some of these situations. Some people do not want to go to shelters, and I understand their kind of thought process when it comes to that. But the idea of being out here stuck in this storm for several hours and having to deal with this, I couldn't imagine that. And your heart goes out to people who make that decision. At the same time, I'm going to step out of this at some point and get dry for a little bit, of course, right? We have that availability, but for other people, they might not have that experience. And that's what you really think about in a situation like this, or even someone who loses their home. Because I can tell you it's a long process to get your house back together. It's something that you don't forget in terms of when you have hurricane damage. This is not a storm that you just forget about. You think about those folks in Harvey, they're still dealing with the after effects of a hurricane. And look, you covered Katrina, so you know the ideas of how this has just a mental effect on people when it comes to what storms do to you. There's some kid somewhere tonight that's hearing this wind hitting a house, or maybe a tree hitting a house. They will never forget that sound. It is something when you live through a storm, like I said earlier, you will mark your life by this storm. This storm will never be forgotten by the people who live in this area because the impact it will have on their life. Because sometimes this is the most terrifying night that you'll experience when you live in the state of Florida.
Yeah, and of course, when we talk about perhaps Sarasota or Punta Gorda not getting the kind of a storm that they had anticipated, obviously any deviation of the storm, it can be good for one city, for one town, but it can mean tragedy for another town. We certainly saw that with Charlie back in 2004 when it was coming up. People thought it was going to make a direct hit on Tampa. It swerved at the last minute. I think it was just a 4-degree change, and that means it hit and decimated Punta Gorda a lot. The other thing about this storm, and we've been covering this now for days, just the sheer size of it is extraordinary. And we continue, even now, at this hour, at this stage of the storm, we continue to get a sense of just the size of it. The fact that we have reporters on the West Coast, where we are here in Tampa, but also still have reporters on the East Coast, Brian Todd, still in West Palm Beach, still in the midst of this storm, still seeing bad conditions out there, wind and rain. Let's check in with Brian. How is it now? Because, Brian, I feel like you have been on, I don't know for how many hours, and I'm just pointing that out to give it a sense of the length of the storm, the length of time that people in West Palm Beach and Miami and elsewhere have just had to deal with some level of Hurricane Irma.
That's right, Anderson. We've been on the air for 14 hours. This storm has been of this intensity, hurricane force winds, for about 9 hours. You mentioned that Punta Gorda dodged a bullet, didn't get the storm they anticipated. Well, Palm Beach and West Palm Beach, where I'm standing, they got much more of the storm than they anticipated. Palm Beach County has just been just pounded unrelentingly by this wind. And now the rain has ceased here. The wind has certainly not ceased, and it's gone in a circular motion at times, making it even more threatening. We saw 3 transformers blow up just a few yards away from us here.
an intense kind of blue concussive blast into the sky. So it's still very intense and very dangerous here. There's so many projectiles flying. And now that we've been in darkness for a couple of hours, that makes it even more dangerous. You cannot see something flying at you. So our team here has to be very cognizant of that. What we can also report to you tonight from this county, Anderson, is that the intensity of this wind has prompted a rescue, and a pretty significant one. The mayor of Riviera Beach, Florida, in this county, Palm Beach County, has told us, his name is Thomas Masters, he has told us that the Stony Brook apartment complex in Riviera Beach had the roofs ripped off, two apartment units of that complex. They had to get first responders in there in these conditions and rescue at least 50 people. 50 people pulled out of those apartment units, the Stony Brook apartments in Riviera Beach. Thomas Masters said that he himself went over there along with the fire and the police department and went door to door, to get people out of there. Luckily, they got at least 50 people out. They got them safely to a shelter, including several small children, and there were no injuries. But again, the intensity of this wind, people thinking in this county that they could ride it out, and it's just been pounding for several hours. And those people at that apartment complex maybe thought it wouldn't last this long. Well, it certainly did. And this evening, they had to be rescued. Palm Beach County officials said, our message is clear. The curfew is still on here. You can be arrested if you're out here. And they want people to get inside, stay hunkered down, stay in shelters. This is just not letting up, Anderson. It is not letting up here at all.
Yeah, that's the message from the chief of police here in Tampa, who I spoke to a short time ago, who was saying, look, you may think that this isn't as bad as it might have been, but this is still a deadly storm. There is still a potential for an awful lot of bad things to happen in the hours ahead. So please just stay at home, stay in the shelter you're in, and just keep riding this out. You've gotten this far. Just push through the night, and let's get to tomorrow safely. Brian, we'll continue checking with you. Another short break here. We'll be right back.
Look.
So they're not even that close to the water. Look how far, Diana, that water has made it, and look how high it's gone. And one perspective that we can give you, I don't know if you can see it at this point, but I can describe it for you. There is a fire hydrant that is on the left side of your screen there near that white building in the center. At the beginning, we were able to see it. Now it's gone under that water. So I can tell you that this isn't just a situation that continuing. We're seeing an area here in downtown Miami unlike we've never seen it before. You know, we grew up here, so many of us did, and have never experienced these kinds of conditions. This is the middle of downtown Miami near the JW Marriott, the Morton's there, usually a very dry area, not ever considered a low-lying area by any means. Brian Enton is there. He is with our crew trying to keep all our equipment safe, and that's part of what you're seeing there. And the challenge in all this for our crews to bring you these images to stress the importance of staying indoors, because we did see somebody driving through that area that if they get in trouble at this point, they're on their own, because officials with these kinds of wind gusts, and we're experiencing some up to 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts, are not going out to help you if you do get into trouble. No, it's not safe for anyone. It's not safe for them, and it's not safe for you. Let's go to Fort Lauderdale Beach right now, and let's see how conditions are shaping up there. I believe we have Brandon Byer in the middle of, oh wow, it doesn't look good there either. All right, it looks like we lost Brandon. We may be able to reconnect with him in just a short bit. In the meantime, that picture is not surprising at all. It's Fort Lauderdale Beach, and we expect it to look that way. Some of the conditions are just awful across South Florida right now. As we are reiterating something that's very important, this hurricane did not make landfall here. Remember, we were talking about that earlier in the week, that we expected it to. Well, it made landfall in Cudjoe Key, south of Marathon, at about 9:10 this morning. However, because of the size and the strength of the system, everything that our weather team has been telling us throughout the week has proven to hold true. Chief,
listen.
Sometimes my family doesn't think I take it as seriously as I should, just because, I know the nature of the storms, and
National Weather Service is asking us to
we follow what our officials are telling us, and at the moment that the National Weather Service and the emergency management officials say it is time to evacuate, that is when someone like me, who is hardened and lived here in
Naples now, where some strong feeder bands are just starting to hit Southwest Florida. Griff Jenkins is there. Hi, Griff.
Hey, New York.
Well, here's what they're doing. The camera is
You're starting to see him swirl, so I gotta believe
windshield wiper. The corresponding Griff Jenkins is out here. And we hear the wind, so we know we can hear him. Somebody keep the area
of Key Largo where we're located, and we're not near the eye as much as Key West was, and some of the video we've seen out of there is just brutal. As you go south Isla Mirada and other places, we've been told they're getting hammered as well. There's no way that anybody can go out and help anybody in this, and we know that the emergency services here said they would stop at 45-mile-an-hour sustained wind, and again, that was a long time ago. But Shepard, I know you see the video. We can't see the actual. We can't see the actual.
We're just behind me.
The lovely campus, and you just see in that eerie light on one of those minarets, it really lights up the way how much rain is falling all across this area, and just moving in sheets, moving fast. This is relatively now a fast-moving storm. I think it was 14 miles an hour last time we checked in with Tom, and we'll hear from him in just a moment. But again, just one of the scenes. There's still power in this area. But as the chief of police here in Tampa was telling me, there are a number of areas, numbers of neighborhoods in Tampa that are without power. 3 million people without power in Florida. That was the last figure we got about an hour or so ago. Let's bring in Tom. Let's bring in Tom Sater. 3 million customers without power, I should say, in Florida. I want to bring in Tom Sater now at the Weather Center. Tom, we've been talking about the kind of confusion about this storm, dissipation in some places, but an eastward movement, but also just kind of the uncertainty at this hour. And I know we're going to get an update in the 11 o'clock hour, which is really going to be critical. A lot of people are going to be paying attention to that very, very closely, as they should, as are emergency personnel. But where is this thing now? Just give us an overview.
It's northeast of Punta Gorda, probably a good 25, 26 miles. We're still seeing some purple on the infrared, and that's the highest, coldest cloud top. So it's like a fighter that doesn't want to go down. It's in between the 5th and 6th round. So this thing is still breathing. It's still moving. It's still a formidable storm. And before we go further, I should mention to everybody who's concerned about this, when it comes to the Atlantic hurricane season, today, September 10th, is the peak, historically and statistically. So the environment, of course, is you would expect it to be at its highest today. Between August 7th and September 7th, in that 1 month period, we've had 6 hurricanes. This is the last. We are seeing some dry air trying to infiltrate the system, but here is the path and the track from the National Hurricane Center. I want to talk about what we're expecting at the 11 o'clock hour. We possibly will see, and what we believe is to have a little bit of this center cone here slide eastward. And that's only because in the last couple of hours, where the system is now from where it made landfall, Marco Island, a little bit of an edge to the east, a little bit of a wobble, wanting to trend and deviate toward the east, maybe toward Lake County, keeping it maybe away from Tampa somewhat toward Orlando. But the National Hurricane Center still believes that over the midnight hour, or over the overnight period, we will see a northwestern movement. But when will that occur? And so that's why it's critical to keep an eye on this. This is another model, and it continues to keep the eye pretty much just over the entire western coastline. So again, where the center is now, we expect it's more inland. This is kind of hard to believe at this point, but you get the general idea of still its strength, still its momentum, still the heavy amounts of rain, which are still producing wind gusts in excess of 85, 90. We've even had 99 miles per hour. And that was earlier, of course, in St. Lucia nuclear power plant. Tornado watch has been extended northward. So you can see it. And we still have tornado warnings. South of Daytona Beach toward the southeast on the coastline. Again, the heaviest rainfall has been there. Melbourne up toward Cocoa Beach, now moving north of Cocoa Beach. Here's what we're watching as far as our circulation. Now, you can see where Port Charlotte is. Our circulation well to the northeast. As the bands continue to move in, get ready, Anderson, because we've got a few more heavy, blinding bands of rainfall that'll slide through your area, moving through Lakeland even as we speak. But again, it's this band that's offshore on the East Coast that is really producing some frightening flash flooding that continues to make its way north of Melbourne. Anderson?
And just the speed of this, is it still about 14 miles an hour?
It is. Yes, significantly faster than it was, of course, yesterday when it was about 6. So, again, that'll add to the track when they take the speed, the center point, the possible movements with the steering currents. I think we're going to find our track a little bit more inland. But, again, that's not until 11 p.m. Until then, it's still coming down and still producing enough winds to knock out more power to many more people.
Now, is it possible, I mean, that the eye could in any way reform, or is it past that?
No, it's pretty much past that. Once it makes landfall, the eye, the core, it's closing up. It's more of a rain shaft. But again, it's still a center point, which is still, of course, the cornerstone of all of its energy. So until we get up a little bit further north in northern part of the state, that's where it'll run into some winds that are higher aloft, and they should start shearing the system apart. So we've got several hours. Again, it's not going to get to you till maybe 1 in the morning, and it's going to continue. Right now, your winds are west, so the water should be getting shoved out away from the bay, away from the coastline. And of course, when this system is north of you, you're still going to get those wraparound winds that'll put that storm surge back up into the bay. So it's still dangerous on many, many levels. Anderson.
I appreciate that, Tom. Again, that 11 o'clock update is going to be incredibly important. Let's go to General Russell Honore, who's standing by for us in Orlando. General, just in terms of what you're seeing, 3 million customers so far without power. FEMA administrator yesterday, Brock Long, saying some folks, the worst case scenario, some folks could be without power for weeks. What do you make of this? What's on your, your top 10 list of concerns here?
Well, number one, some of those grids could have been taken down out of caution to prevent the continuous blowing of the transformers. The more transformers blow, the more longer it's going to take to get the grid back up. This next thing is, it don't look like we've lost any distribution lines yet. Anderson, where you're standing there, just a few miles away, if you look a little bit to the east, you'll see a power plant. That's Tampa Electric Company. If you go a few miles to the north, you'll see the Crystal River nuclear power plant. So you've got a good base there to switch power back and forth. If the distribution lines stay up and the service lines stay up, we're going to be in good shape. The newer part of the city is probably going to have lights. I would say out in the suburban areas where the subdivisions are, that those light systems will go down because the service lines will start to come down with the wind. That being said, there's 2 points there, Anderson, I'm really concerned about. Right near you where you're standing is the Tampa Bay Public Hospital. It's at that 12-foot elevation.
It's just down
right there on the tip of the aisle. That place surge could get to the first floor of that hospital, and that could contribute to certain, we had in Beaumont last week. The other one is what impact if the nuclear power plants start taking water, will they be able to discharge us? Those are the big concern. But on the other side of that, Anderson, I want to tell you, last week I spoke about the organic nature of how the search and rescue was done. I spoke about, I thought we were slow in deploying ships. Matter of fact, ships were not notified to deploy until well after landfall. What a difference the storm made. The chairman and the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense has emptied the boneyard. We got the entire Atlantic Fleet led by an aircraft carrier that's going to be leading the search and rescue mission with an air boss, with the capability to do air command and control, as well as do an organized search grid system. It is organized. They're coming in big. The Army has committed 9,000 troops, 300 trucks already committed, and 3,000 trucks standing by to come to Florida. So the change in one storm, they have leaned forward. These troops are on the way, and the ships are following this storm in, and we should see them the first light tomorrow morning going into Key West, Anderson.
General Honore, that'll be a welcome sight, I'm sure, for a lot of folks in Key West, where the damage is still trying to be assessed. Obviously, very difficult to do it now. The darkness has come. General, appreciate your perspective. We're going to take another short break. Our coverage continues in just a moment.
Since there are deteriorating, Anderson, I'm hugely concerned. A watching in northeast Miami-Dade County, where the waters have just been kicking up very high, This is dangerous. This is in Miami itself. Turn around, don't drown is what the National Weather Service is asking us to remind our viewers. If you're out and about in this aid, they say you shouldn't be. And if so, waters are rising across South Florida now, just as predicted. Storm surge is coming in, and as a result, their plea is turn around.
The wind gusts coming at us as we drive down.
As a result,
look at the gusts
their plea is turn around, don't drown, because the waters are coming up so quickly, as they are in the Brickell section.
Radio, because what is ultimately going to happen is this wind condition is going to meet the storm surge, and that will be flooding, and that is this worst case scenario that they're talking about. Shep?
Griff Jenkins along the road there in Naples. We're watching in Hollywood, Florida from WSVN, where the waters are rising as well, and we happen to have on the line with us Juan Perez, who's the Miami-Dade County Police Chief. Chief, how are things in Miami-Dade?
Well, right now we're probably in the harshest of winds that we're going to experience for our portion of IRMA. We're facing 80 to 100 mile per hour gusts from 60 to 70. All of our folks are sheltered right now, waiting for this to pass, and I expect that later on in the evening, I'll be able to put 1,200 men and women back out in the streets and start protecting our residents again and helping them out, saving lives.
Have you been getting a lot of calls for service? I know you have to keep first responders at bay for now, but have there been a lot of calls?
No, people understood we weren't going to be able to respond, so we messaged them real well. We had plenty of advance, so that worked to our favor. Nobody's really ventured out and risked their lives, so far that we know of. It's just right now what we do have is we already know that we have plenty of road blockages with debris, trees down, fences, power lines. Last count, we had 675 of the 1.1 million accounts for the power and light. From SPNL account, they're down. So we're talking it's probably increased. So we're probably 3/4 of our power grids are down, which is going to be a huge challenge for us. We'll have to manage through all that.
Police Chief of Miami-Dade County, a lot of work ahead. What are your biggest concerns, Chief?
Well, right now, as soon as we start making an assessment and we hit the streets, we're going to do anything we can to save lives and look for folks that are stuck, trapped in houses, or that need us for emergency purposes. The secondary thing is with the power outages is obviously preventing crime from occurring and managing the intersections once people get out and about so we can prevent some crashes. But it'll be all hands on deck, and we'll have to wear multiple hats on this. We've experienced this before. We do law enforcement at some point will become secondary, and it'll be a humanitarian role and just doing anything we can to help our residents.
Juan Perez is the chief of the Miami-Dade County.
Covering it. Tom Sater has been down in the weather center. Reporters have been all over the area. But again, we're having signal issues, but we're still covering this major hurricane. We're working as hard as we can to get Anderson back up. But as you have been seeing, it came ashore at a magnitude 4 and then eventually dwindled to a 3 and now 2. And then tropical storm weather is probably going to happen in just a little bit. Getting some information now from producers. We're going to get to Alex Marquardt. Alex has been covering this for us as well. He is in Sarasota, Florida, about 50 miles south of where Anderson is getting battered there. So, Alexander, what are you seeing? What's going on where you are?
Yeah, we're starting to get battered as well. We are about 50 miles south of where Anderson is. We have watched what has happened to our teams down in Miami, in Naples, in Fort Myers as this storm comes up the coast. I can tell you right now at 10 p.m., we are entering what will likely be the most dangerous period for Sarasota. We are expecting 4 hours of peak winds. Let me just give you a sense of what we're seeing out here. I'm just going to pull this cable with me. This main road here, which has been to downtown Sarasota, has essentially become a wind tunnel. All evening, we have seen these winds just rain, which comes in gusts, and at its worst, feels like little bugs stinging your face. Now, the big question is, will this city lose power? We have seen over the course of the past few hours power going in, going out, coming back on. Right now, you can see that there are street lights that are still on. The storefront lights are still on. Also, what kind of debris is coming down? So far, we're hearing from the city and we're seeing ourselves that it's not too bad. I'm just going to show you what exactly we're seeing out here. This is the kind of thing, these palm fronds are the kind of things that are flying off of trees. And once the winds really kick up, and those are the kinds of things that can actually do some damage. Now, what we're hearing in terms of the forecast is that starting now at 10 p.m., we're going to start seeing hurricane force winds. Those winds are going to average around 80 miles an hour, going all the way up in terms of gusts to around 100 miles an hour. That's a category 1. The eye of IRMA, we have learned in the past hour, is not going to pass over Sarasota. It is going over to the east, about 20 or 30 miles east of Sarasota. So to some extent, there is a bit of a bullet that is being dodged here by this city. We understand that the storm surge prediction has also been corrected from 3 to 6 feet to around 1 to 3 feet. But as we've seen over the course of the past few days, these forecasts, these predictions change dramatically in just a few moments or just a few hours. It remains to be seen what will happen in the coming hours. But what we do know is the most intense period is starting right now, Don.
Alex, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's get back now to Anderson. We've got that signal back up. Anderson, happens in these storms. I knew it was going to take over for you at the top of the hour, but I didn't expect it to happen this quickly.
Yeah, you know, we were surprised because it wasn't a particularly bad period, although now, frankly, in the last 2 minutes or so, as we were listening to Alex, we're getting a big gust right now. You can really see it. I'm just, again, to look at that water, I'm just fascinated by this shot. And if Jake could just push in on it, you know, this is the Hillsborough River, which is down really probably about 10 feet from what it was earlier today. But it is just getting swept with wave after wave, sheet after sheet of just this driving rain, which is now in some ways moving almost horizontally, not as much as you see at the height of a hurricane. Alex, who's about 50 miles south, was saying that to be in Sarasota in the next hour or so, we are not looking at the worst until maybe two or 3 hours from right now. We are, of course, going to bring all of that to you as it happens. I want to go to Bryn Gingras, who is in Orlando, where they have been seeing, obviously, that's the thing about this storm, Don. All of Florida is seeing this storm. All of Florida is being affected in one way or another, to lesser degrees or to greater degrees. Bryn, how are things right now in Orlando?
Yeah, I mean, Anderson, everybody came to Orlando to escape the coast because they were worried about their homes. And now we're getting really hammered with some sort of weather at this point. Like I said, in the last hit, we're not getting really a sustained heavy winds. We're really getting just really strong wind gusts. And that's just enough to get things really churning on the streets here. We've seen street lamps come down. We've seen a lot of debris. We also know that at this point, because the wind gusts have been so strong, that emergency crews have suspended their efforts to help anybody out. Now, a curfew went into effect for this county, Orange County, at 7 o'clock. It's not lifted until 6 o'clock tomorrow. And there's a reason for that, of course, is to get everybody off the streets. And we did see a few people a little earlier, but now it seems like everybody has gone inside and is definitely taking cover at this point as we're seeing the storm pick up. We do expect its worst, though, to be at 12 o'clock. So we still have several hours of this. Anderson?
Several hours, I think, for a lot of people in a lot of different parts of the state. Let's go over to Ryan Young, who's in Clearwater, just west of here. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's stay with Bryn. We'll try to check in with Ryan in a short time. Bryn, just in terms of getting around in Orlando, how does this compare with what people were expecting?
Well, I don't think they were expecting to see these major wind gusts. Really just only a few hours ago, Anderson, we saw people coming out. We're staying at a hotel that is just filled with animals, again, because all the hotels in the area, you have to remember, this is Orlando, of course. This is a resort town. 100,000 rooms were available for people who needed to evacuate, and all those hotels filled up in addition to shelters. So people really taking cover at this point in those shelters that they came here for, Anderson.
Bryn, I appreciate that. I want to go to Ryan Young, who is in Clearwater. Ryan, it's just west of where we are now. Big gusts just in the last 5 or so minutes. How are things there?
Look, the wind gusts continue to pick up here. We're just south of the airport, and you can really feel the swirl coming through. I want to say earlier on, we thought they were maybe 20, 30 mile per hour wind gusts, but maybe as we're talking to our weather department, we've experienced as much as 60 to 65 mile per hour wind gusts. And I can tell you, we can see debris flying all over the area here. And especially when it comes to power lines. The good news here, though, is power has not been shut off, and we haven't seen any major damage to any roofs in the nearby area. Anderson.
And Ryan, just in terms of the worst, I mean, obviously, next 2 or 3 hours, that's probably when, previously we've been told in this area probably be around 11 o'clock. So the way the storm is sort of dissipating, it's hard to know at this point. What are you hearing in terms of, what are you expecting in terms of when the worst is going to be?
Well, you know what? Here's one of the things that we wanted to talk about. One, we have a bunch of lights on us to show the area, and other.
The all-new Volkswagen Tiguan with available pedestrian monitoring. The new king of the concrete. Its money managers are pretty much the same. While some push high-commission investment products, Fisher Investments avoids them. Some advisors have hidden layered fees. Fisher Investments never does. And while some advisors are happy to earn commissions from you, do you do well or not? Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when you do better. Maybe that's why most of our clients come from other money managers. Fisher Investments, clearly better money management. A heart attack doesn't care what you eat or how.
I used to feel like my metabolism was stuck.
Here. Yeah, Sean Daly in our parking garage right now. So, Sean, are those winds whipping you around a bit? They look like they've calmed down some.
You know, I can feel they just did one of those creepy howls out there. I tell you, Mother Nature is doing some pretty remarkable stuff out there. Earlier, somebody was talking about it being a slashing rain. Well, check under the light right here. It's kind of an every which way rain. Sometimes it's one way, sometimes the other. That is the madness of this storm. You know, it's crazy. And then look at the trees over there with the wind. It's an every which way wind as well. It just can't make its mind up. As we stand here, you know, it intensifies more and more every 5-10 minutes. You get it. And then if you really want to see it illustrated perfectly, and I'll describe it for people who are listening to us on the radio, look at the top of Raymond James Stadium, okay? Imagine a pot, a boiling pot. And let's say it's a boiling pot of spaghetti, since we've been dealing with spaghetti models all day. And imagine the steam coming off that pot, and then you blow the steam off. That's what the top of Raymond James Stadium looks like. You have a lot of rain, you have lights coming there, you have a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and it's blowing off, and it's getting faster and faster up there. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Sean. Very descriptive.
Yeah.
You can tell he's written some things before. Yeah.
It's an eerie sight we've been seeing all day. We were talking about this earlier. A kind of an odd phenomenon here is the water receding from the Gulf around the area.
Yeah, we also saw it on Bayshore Boulevard in South Tampa as well. Our Heather Lee joins us now live. More on that, Heather.
Hey guys, so yeah, the wind has really picked up. As you can see, I am having to brace myself sort of onto the pavement because the rain is going sideways. The wind is picking up. I have a hard time looking in that direction because the rain is so hard and the wind is so powerful. But I can tell you the most interesting thing about all of this, even though we have these conditions and they have gotten significantly worse,